Well, and I think the reason that happens is because it's not productive and it's not solution oriented.
Yeah.
It's venting to vent.
Yeah.
And that in and of itself is only going to get you more worked up instead of coming at it from the perspective of like, how can I solve this?
Yeah.
How can I like feel better about this? And how can I engage with this person differently? We go back, like way back, 21 years back. I'm Chloe.
And I'm Kelly. And we have been friends long enough to know that that kind of connection is rare.
We've recognized a pattern that we can come together feeling overwhelmed and jaded by life, but can walk away from our conversations feeling elevated and fulfilled. Our goal is to have our listeners share in that experience with each episode.
This podcast is our love letter to each other. It has been years in the making, and finally the stars have aligned, and we like to open up our conversations to you. We intend to build a community where no topic is off the table.
In a world where discomfort is actively avoided, therapy is not accessible to many, yet you should talk to a therapist, is a reflex response that denies connection. We have found that talking it out has been a form of free therapy in itself.
We dive into topics like death, divorce, disordered eating, debt, and every taboo topic in between, all while balancing the scales with our tongue-in-cheek humor.
With that, who's ready to get taboo?
Test. Oh my God, if you haven't watched the most recent Call Her Daddy.
Have not.
She talks about She talks about gossiping versus venting.
Polly and I were just having to talk about this.
It is incredible.
Oh my gosh,
it's
what
incredible.
Did she say? Because
she was talking about how important it is to know the difference and to call yourself out when you are it's okay to vent, but that people use venting as a justification for gossiping about other people.
Well, I'll take it one step further.
Do that.
My issue with venting.
We should steal this topic, by the way.
Yeah, I'm totally. Let's go off on this for a second.
Okay.
My issue with venting is that unless you want to fix the problem, you're just talking shit.
Correct.
So I think people use venting as a way to be like, oh, I just need to get this off my chest. But they're not interested in a solution. And they're not interested in working it out with the person that is causing them this stress.
No, that's
or discomfort.
Literally me. No, yeah.
So it's like, unless you want to get to the bottom of it and actually and use this as a productive way to then engage with that person who's actually bothering you, who's causing you this distress.
Right.
Keep your fucking mouth shut.
Yeah.
Because to me, if you're coming to me and saying oh, this person, blah, 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 and you don't want to engage with I want to approach them and I want to have this conversation with them and I want to come to a resolution or to end this connection, whatever that solution looks like. You're gossiping, you're talking shit, and and you're masking it. It was just, I just need to get this off my chest.
Well, and I think I can speak really honestly too. Yeah, I do vent a lot and talk. I mean, in turn, talk a lot of shit. And even doing that, the whole venting, getting it off your chest. I am someone that I hold anxiety in my chest, and then I just need to get it out or I'm not okay. I need to freak out and then I can ground myself again. But cause my physical body holds on to it.
Yeah.
But I also tend to work myself up and spin myself even more when I'm venting. If anything, I get into the spins more to where I get more angry and more upset, and then I'm not thinking clearly, and then it turns into something so much bigger than it actually is.
Well, and I think the reason that happens is because it's not productive and it's not solution oriented.
Yeah.
It's venting to vent.
Yeah.
And that in and of itself is only going to get you more worked up instead of coming at it from the perspective of how can I solve this?
Yeah.
How can I feel better about this? And how can I engage with this person differently?
I think in that also this could be a whole podcast episode in itself, but I think anger is one of the easiest places to stay in when we don't want to sort out our emotions and sit with ourselves.
Because what's fueling the anger?
Right, exactly. And I think that anger is just so much easier than reflecting. I think it's just projection, you know?
It is, because it's a manifestation of something deeper, just sadness or being super manic. It's actually coming from something so much deeper, and it's a masking thing, or I wouldn't say it's an expression of something else.
Yeah.
So you can focus on the expression or you can focus on the cause.
Yeah. It's a complicated one. And I think that a venting culture is a slippery slope.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that kind of like lying, it gets a little addicting.
Mm-hmm.
And
yeah, well, I mean, to go back to our last episode where we were talking about like, wait, what did you just say? It literally evaporated. What did you just say?
Hold on. When people say that things evaporate, then it evaporates from my head. I said that venting can get addicting.
Oh, yeah. Just like lying can get addicting.
100%.
Because I don't know where I was going with that.
Good thought. Welcome to the episode, guys.
Welcome to the episode. That was crazy. I would like to get into this.
No, I'm
on another ep.
Like Alex Cooper, we're going to steal your theme. Like, I think we should just talk about this.
Well, I just think it's hilarious that Polly and I were just walking 3 days ago and we were talking about this.
Yeah. I think it's a life lesson that I'm still learning. Like the balance between.
I remember.
Oh, bringing it back. Pause. Go.
Should we save this for the episode or should we just talk about it now?
Save it for the episode. No. Just say it though, because it's going to bother me.
It's going to evaporate.
What is it? Just say it really fast and then we'll start because we got appointments to get to, girl. Let's get into this.
I have therapy after this, okay? No, it's the... Hold on, Polly.
I hate you.
Edit this. Hold on.
Okay, I'm eating coffee. I don't have time for you anymore. It's ridiculous.
Oh, yeah. Okay. It's like a way to connect with people, gossiping and venting.
Yeah.
It's like a way to connect, quote unquote.
Yeah.
But it's actually, you're not connecting over anything meaningful. You're like bonding over like tearing someone else down.
Again, no longevity.
And, like, mutual hate.
It's like trauma bonding.
Exactly. And that was what I got to with that group of people, or like multiple groups of people, like multiple groups of people throughout different stages of life. But that's what like was the catalyst of like, I have nothing in common with you. I can't talk about anything that I'm interested in. I don't even know what my interests are because I'm just bonding with you over talking shit about someone else.
And eventually the shit's going to run out and then you got nothing to talk to. And then it's when you're
I can call it venting if I want, but it's not solution oriented. It's gossiping.
It's gossiping. It's because you have nothing to talk about. And again, like that's where my life lesson of like, sometimes you just need to let people go because it's not a good fit.
It's not a fit.
There's 7 billion people on the planet. You're not going to meet someone and they're going to be a fit right away.
And I think if you apply that to like any relationship, right? It's like not everybody is like meant to be with you for your whole story. Sometimes they're just like lessons. A season, you know? And I look at everyone as a teacher.
Yeah.
Right? Like there's one person individually like that I'm kind of struggling with a bit right now. And it's
me, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, I knew it.
I
blast it on the podcast. Yeah.
Let's just
put me on
blast.
blast.
No, it's totally someone else. And I have talked about it in therapy and I've talked about it with Kevin because to me, I'm like trying to navigate like, how do I proceed with this person? Is it something that's worth like talking about, or is it something that is just meant for me to reflect on the feelings that they invoke in me? Right? Because like they make me feel a certain way. And I'm like, is it just they're here to teach me how to deal with these feelings in myself? And it's not necessarily about them or who they are as a person. They're a mirror. They're like, they're reflecting things back to me for me to sit with or like, or recognize parts that still need healing or still need attention.
Such an old soul.
I'm working towards it, you know, and something that I've sat with, it's like, okay, sometimes the way they engage in a group setting and I'm like really triggered by it. And I'm like, ooh, I hope I don't come off that way. Cause I'm like, I'm usually this person in a group setting and I am not liking how I'm witnessing it. Is it because I'm projecting?
Oh,
and I think that this is how I come off and I don't want to engage this way.
Right.
Or like not feeling heard or not feeling listened to. Like when I engage with this person, like they'll ask me a question and as soon as I start to answer it, they're looking everywhere else and like not engaging with what I have to say anymore. And so then I'll just like, okay, I'm not going to continue to speak.
Right.
Because you're not showing or communicating interest.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. All those things said, it's teaching me it's important to feel heard. Yeah. And that is like something that is very sensitive to me to not feel heard. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. That's something to work on or to like kind of unpack a little bit. Also how I show up in groups. Am I giving other people the time of day or am I just kind of like showing up and now the party can start? Like you can like, it's my world. We're just living in it. Yeah. So at the end of the day, I don't think it's so much about that person.
Right. I don't. I don't either. I mean, I think I do agree that I think that everyone comes into your life for a reason. I think that especially in your 20s, a lot of the people you're going to encounter are people that are going to help fuel your growth, teach you big, hard lessons about relationships, love, whatever, friendship, whatever, you know, the case may be. And I guess it's hard because I think there's been an attitude, at least I've been around people, that it's like, if they don't serve you, cut them. I do not believe in that. I think that is such a toxic way to think. And I think that's a little bit cruel. I think that there is a way to remove yourself respectfully, or you need to take care of yourself first. But if, I also believe that people come into our lives for a reason. And I think it's always, in one way or another, a positive reason, whether that be a lesson or just like they do bring stuff to your life that sometimes is hard to be thankful for in the moment. And it's a pretty weird way to treat someone that's helping your development, to cut them off.
Correct.
Like, if it's toxic,
it's a disservice to yourself.
Absolutely.
Because you're stunting your development,
Yes.
right? Because I think everybody serves, like, they play a character in your story.
Yeah.
And if you just like kill off that character because it's uncomfortable.
Good word. Important, critical.
Right.
Yeah.
Then it's like you have like the plot is affected.
Yeah,
It's,
completely.
And it's not as strong, and there's not as much character development when you just cut that person out. You're like, I don't want to do that. So
bye.
Yeah. And it's
just that's
really
stunted.
ineffective.
It is. And I think it's, I think the first thing when you're having that kind of turmoil with someone is like, recognizing like you did, like, what are the lessons? What are the things that maybe I'm feeling insecure about that this person's provoking in me? But then I am a good pro-con list girly. And I feel like, what is it productive to have a conversation with it? Or is it something that I just need to recognize what they're provoking in me and work on myself quietly?
Yeah.
And find ways to put up like healthy boundaries with them,
Yeah.
to where you're not cutting them out, but you're also not giving them so much access to like you and your
Yes. And you know what's,
being.
You just hit the nail on the head of like the things I've been kind of like talking about in therapy, is because it's like, what should I do with this person? Do I continue to engage, or do I just kind of, and I found myself struggling with that recently, where like it keeps happening. Every time I'm around this person, I start to talk and they just look away. Like, they're just engaged with the rest of the group or whatever else is going on, like highly distractible.
Right.
And I had this moment of like, well, if they're going to do that to me, I'll do it back to them. And then I was like, no, I'm so much better than that reactive engagement. Like I can still show up how I want to show up and offer them the parts of myself that I'm really proud of. And the fact that I can be a really good listener and really engaging. I like that about myself. Yeah. Why would I stop doing that or offering that to this person? Just because maybe they can't offer it back to me. Yeah,
you're giving them a lot of power doing that.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. Because then it changes like
your personality
and my authenticity, right? Like I no longer am being authentic to myself because I'm in a reactive place.
Right.
And like with that, like I have to recognize it's not all about me, right? They have other things that they're struggling with that I have no idea about.
Such an important thing to remember always with conflict.
Always.
You just don't know.
I only can feel it and know it from my side. Right. I have no idea what their experience is. And maybe they're like so incredibly like mentally bogged down with something that they can't even like focus on conversation anymore. Right.
Right. And also, not to be harsh, but this is like something harsh I have to tell myself because I really struggle with confrontation.
Yeah.
It's like something I'm getting better at, but it's so hard. It's like, do I have a right to be upset with someone if I'm not going to fucking communicate with them my issues? I'm upset. Like, if I'm not saying anything, that's kind of my problem then.
Yeah. It's not, no one else is responsible for my feelings.
Exactly.
And also, I truly believe like no one can upset you or trigger you. You allow those feelings in yourself. Like I really try to practice like that the stoicism mindset or approach to things where it's like, I have complete control over my mind. Yeah. Right. Like I might not have control over what happens to my body. Like if I'm injured, if like all these external things are happening, but the one thing I can control is my like thoughts in my mind. And it all comes back to that. No one can affect that. Yeah. If I feel affected, I'm allowing myself to feel affected. Right. And so like when someone is behaving in a way that invokes a emotional response in you, it's your responsibility to investigate that. Yeah. Because it's not like we are talking about, it's not about them. It's about us, like, and what's going on internally. So like back to everybody's a mirror, everybody's a teacher. I think that this person is here in my life to like really get me to sit with these uncomfortable feelings and like teaching me how to engage with someone in an authentic way that's not reactive, right?
Yeah.
But then it goes back to like, do I have a conversation with them? Is that even necessary or important? Or is it just, like you said, more important to like internally and quietly process?
I think it's important to like reflect the things that they're invoking in you that feel uncomfortable and icky, but then also to like not to be like, I don't know, like it's really hard because I really like try to avoid giving advice, but I like feel like you're kind of asking. And I just think that you're doing all the right parts, but the little piece that I would do next is also listing out or like reflecting on what do they bring to your life.
Mm-hmm.
If it's just circumstantial, like you guys are friends or acquaintances by proxy, but you guys are then honestly, like I would say I wouldn't personally because I just don't but for me, you're so much more direct at times than I am.
Mm-hmm.
And it takes a lot of my energy to be direct, and it takes a lot of work and a lot of like mental and emotional prep that I only am going to give that directness to people that I truly need in my life on a daily basis.
Oh, that's so
it's
interesting.
so much work for me. So it's like, do I want to, I can appreciate someone and what the lessons they're giving me. But I also think at the end of the day, knowing when things take a lot out of you, protecting that peace is so important. So if it was an acquaintance, I'd be like,
and that's kind of what it is. So there's two things. So I want to respond to that part, but first I want to say like, it's so interesting that you have that's like your experience with directness. Cause I hadn't considered it from that point of view. For me, being direct requires so much less energy to like sit there and have to engage with someone in a way that's really like gentle and trying to like not crush them or like accommodate them or like honestly maintain like the peace.
Yeah.
That's hard for me.
My biggest fear is hurting someone.
Correct. And I
would rather die than hurt someone.
But for me, I would rather be like honest and not try to filter. Not that I'm saying this is wrong, because I have these conversations with Kevin a lot, and he like, I think the two of you with your like such strong Libra placements are really helpful for my like really sometimes abrasive Aquarius communication.
Mm-hmm.
Because to me, it's like, okay, I have a point that I want to communicate, and to like add emotion or anything, any other tone, like, or to be careful of my tone when I'm trying to communicate is really hard. So sometimes I just like find myself just saying what I think and it not being interpreted in the way that I mean it, because I haven't like infused any like positive or kind tone to it. It's just very like flat sometimes.
Right.
And I think that's also really hard.
Yeah.
So it's interesting. I find that really interesting that for you to be direct is actually harder. But I think that just really speaks to the strength in Libra and the strength in Aquarius. And not that any one is like better than the other.
Right.
But I think that's why like I find my Libra people to be so helpful for me, because they remind me like, no, it is important to like maintain like a good.
It goes back to, you don't know what someone's going through.
Yeah.
And sometimes if someone is in, like when I have been in my depths of despair, like heavy places that I am like going down the fucking rabbit hole, I don't recover if someone even talks to me in the wrong tone. And that's a really scary place to be in. And that's my own thing. But I just always am thinking 100%, you don't know what someone's going through. You don't know what someone's going through. And like, I am a reactive person, sometimes to a volatile point. And so because of that, I think because you're not reactive, it's easier for you to just move through the world in a really like blunt way, because I don't think that you have the, like I carry so many emotions and things are always so charged, and I need time to really have like a grounded way to communicate. And so for me, it's easier for me to pull back, and the people that I'm the most direct with are the ones that I have built that trust that I can be that way. But if it's like an acquaintance or someone that I just like have to see and like don't
engage with like personally,
then
intimately,
then I'm not going to talk to them. That is such a waste of my time.
And that's where I'm at too. It's like, I really don't think that it's necessarily important for me to like pull them aside to have this conversation and like explain how I feel. Right. Cause it's like, that's not their responsibility.
Right.
But what maybe might be more effective is like in the moment, like let's say they ask me a question and I start to respond and then they just like completely disengage.
Say something.
Yeah, that might be an opportunity to say something or to like, I mean, I think call them out. Because I don't think that that's a very like kind behavior.
No, it's awful.
And I think I would want someone to call me out.
Yeah.
I do.
And there's a way to do it.
That.
There's a way to do it, right? Like there's a way to be like, it seems like you're really distracted by something. Let's try to like regroup at the end of the night.
Yeah.
There's a way to like give someone constructive criticism that's like a call out without attacking them.
Correct. And
right?
I like that. And I appreciate that way. I think it's so important to like be careful with your language. And that's where I will put my energy is in the language.
Same.
Where I cannot always give my energy is the tone. And I get feedback on that a lot. Like, and I always have throughout my life. Like, it's like, Jesus, like your tone is so like XYZ. And I'm like, I'm sorry. Like it's hard. I'm trying to focus on like the words I'm using to communicate. Cause I think that's more important.
Right.
Cause I think by saying it seems like you're distracted.
Yeah.
I'm not being like, wow, could you fucking listen to me?
Oh my God, Chloe.
You know what I mean? I think, cause I mean,
I wish I could be around when you do that. Like whatever the situation is, like, I just want you so bad because I want to be able to do this more than anything. Like instead of like my workaround I just did of like, it seems like you're a little distracted. So I'm going to give you space and we can reconvene when you have the
really
space
healthy,
for this. Yeah. But that's a lot of mental thinking for me. Like I have to stop myself in my tracks and be like, okay, little reactive, explosive lady who wants to be like, what the fuck is your problem? Like, I think to be able to be direct, people also, when they are direct, can say those things and it's not so jarring for people. If I were to say that to someone,
what?
Like, why the fuck are you not listening to me?
Well, but that, like, think about that. That is like, that's kind of what we're talking about. It's like coming from a reactive place and it's coming from like a self, like serving place. It's like, you should be listening to me, not like what's going on, like not being curious. I think when you're not offering people curiosity, that's where you get into hot water. Or that's, well, I shouldn't speak in yous or theys or us. Or it's me.
Yeah.
When I don't engage with my curiosity or I start assuming and like filling in the blanks, that's where I get into trouble.
And I think confrontation is very strategic. I think that at least for me,
you're using Libra words. Strategy,
man. Mm-hmm. I just think that I think it can be really selfish sometimes. Mm-hmm. And again, this is where we're different. I'm not calling you selfish. No. I'm saying that it feels selfish for me to be really direct sometimes because I know I'm a reactive person and I stick a lot of my own shit and emotions onto my reactions to things. And so I purposefully slow myself down because I want to be fair. I want there to be fairness in the whole reaction or the whole like encounter, whatever that fucking... What is the word I'm looking for?
Yeah.
Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah. You just sparked a light bulb that I want to come back to.
Okay. Yeah. I just, I think that for me, like, and then I think this is where it gets dangerous, especially with like, if you want to go astrology Libras, the pendulum swings too far and you become a people pleaser, but it's more, I don't want to be reactive. And I think that strategizing confrontation, like my personal strategy is asking questions. Yeah. It's asking questions. It's being like, how are you doing? What's going on in your life? Or like this, or like even just being strategic and saying it feels on my end like you don't have the space for this conversation right now. Do you want to try again later?
Well, and I love that. I think that is...
But is that authentic? Because authentically, I want to be like, what the fuck is your problem?
But I think it's, I think that shows you're learning.
Yeah.
I think that shows the place you've gotten to, which I think is getting out of the reactive place.
Right.
Because we don't want to be in the reactive place. We have that part of ourselves that is like,
so what is reactive versus like direct though? That's where I struggle.
And I think though, the thing that you said that was like, I want it to feel fair.
Yeah.
And I had Libra this light bulb. Yeah. That's the Libra approach where the Aquarius approach is I want to be objective.
Yeah.
So, but there's this focus on removing the emotion.
Yeah.
And removing the
self-involvement. Yeah.
And like focusing on the situation or like the other person and focusing on it as a whole rather than getting stuck in the, well, what about me?
Right.
You know, and that's keeping yourself really small.
Yeah.
So I think that is such a superpower. And when you lean into that, you're practicing that muscle, because the muscle we've practiced up until that point is the what about me muscle.
Right.
So I don't think it's not that it's not authentic to be curious and ask the questions. That's like, that is engaging with other people in the way that you want to, in a way that honestly feels good.
Right.
And I think for me, like, being intentional with my language helps me achieve that objectivity that is so important to me.
Language does matter so much.
And so like, I might not be able to be like, so, and be like really soft, but I can speak in this. And I think this is another thing to me. Like, when people comment on my tone, it feels the same as people commenting on women when they're like, oh, you should smile more when my face is straight. And you know what else? I'm going to go on a tangent here, because when so like over the last like maybe 5 years or whatever, like I've gotten dysport in between my like eyebrows, right?
What does that word mean?
So dysport it's basically like it's a different brand name for Botox. It's a different brand.
Got it.
It's not neuromodulator. It's a neurotoxin.
Got it.
So it freezes the muscle, right?
Okay, yeah.
So that I can't make like a really
furrowed brow.
Since I've been, in middle school, I've always had like a really strong furrowed brow, and it's really
so
hard.
Cute.
It's really hard,
it.
but I end up with an ass crack in the middle of my face.
When you give me that look,
I don't love it. I feel like when I look in the mirror, I look angrier than I feel, and so that's why I've gotten like dysport there.
Yeah,
I haven't gotten in about 2 years now, because for me, like, I want to go as long as I can. And as soon as that line is like a permanent every day, when I'm not like flexing that muscle,
right,
the line is still there. That's like a sign. Okay, maybe it's time to kind of freshen things up.
Right.
That is beside the point. In the past, when I've had it wear off, that's when people start commenting in my place of work. Usually they're like, you look like really tired, or you look really upset, or and they comment on my facial expression. Yeah. And I'm like, well, that's a cue that it's time to get more dysport, time to get more Botox, my God, right?
Yeah.
But I think with the bigger issue, what pisses me off is the comment of like, well, why aren't you smiling? Why are you frowning? Why
Disgusting.
aren't you speaking? Like, what's wrong with your tone?
Right.
When it's like, no, I'm actually just speaking in a neutral way.
Right. I'm just
feels
existing.
like a tone because I'm not infusing all this like syrupy bullshit.
Yeah, I'm not making the space more comfortable for you. I'm just existing.
I'm just
and you're
communicating.
uncomfortable.
And you're uncomfortable with what I have to say.
Totally.
Right. And it's this voice that I'm speaking in.
Right.
But I get that response a lot, like, God, your tone. And okay, so 2 things. Like, if I'm getting that feedback a lot, that is important for me to reflect on.
Of course.
It's also appropriate to think about it and kind of like throw the question back to the curiosity.
Yeah.
So what makes you uncomfortable? The fact that I'm not speaking in a really gentle, like sing-song type of voice.
Right.
Or is it what I'm saying that's uncomfortable? And that's important to have that conversation and kind of distinguish between those 2 things.
And what emotions am I, making you feel? Like, how are you feeling that I'm feeling that's making you so uncomfortable? Do you feel like I'm mad at you?
Yeah.
Why are you so uncomfortable with anger? And like,
why are you uncomfortable with someone having like a dissatisfied response to you?
Right. And why are you being so reactive and assuming I'm mad? That's my thing is I really struggle when I'm talking to people. Like, yes, I am a pretty reactive person, and I get really like overstimulated or just like frustrated. And it's not typically at people, it's with situations. But because I have had so many times in my life where people just assume that I'm mad at them, that it's like, it's exhausting having to explain myself. So I would rather just like try to be as pleasant and happy as possible, because I'm tired of explaining myself. You know what I'm saying? It's exhausting. Like, I'm not mad at you. I'm mad at the situation. And like, me being mad isn't, and this is why I get strategic with how I communicate, because I feel like everyone is so uncomfortable with just bluntness, or not everyone being pleasant all the time. Like, we all want to be happy all the time.
Yeah.
But that's not real.
But then happiness isn't happiness if there's nothing to compare it to.
Correct.
If that's the baseline, then it's actually not, then it's neutral. It's not actually happy.
Right. And
people just are uncomfortable with being uncomfortable.
Right. So then it's like, it's become like a social expectation that we're never mad. We're never irritated. And I don't want to go on a tangent about what it's like to be a woman in the world who's just existing and isn't like, oh my God, hi, how are you? Like, every time I'm around people and I feel that like, I'm good. When like the reality is I'm pretty down bad a lot of the time.
Yeah.
Like I'm pretty down bad 90% of the time.
Well, the other thing I want to touch on with like being a woman in the world, I
Yeah.
think so much of how we're taught to engage is with gossiping, is with venting, is with tearing other people down, is with like, oh my God, did you see what
Yeah.
she said, wore,
Yeah.
did, like XYZ. Fill in
Tear
the blank.
down the other women.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
actually there's a friendship that I like I separated myself from because I recognized that started to be, and it came from an insecure place.
Mhm.
I will say that because I can recognize that in her because I've been there.
Yeah.
Maybe that's projecting.
Maybe.
Whatever.
Probably
I
a little.
interpreted it as her being insecure.
Yeah.
And then anytime we'd be like out, we'd be like out getting food, whatever, a girl would walk in and her first response is, oh my God, do you see what she's wearing?
Oh God, that's so mean.
And it's so sad, but it's also like, I used to do that shit.
Yeah.
I saw this TikTok that I think we've already talked about this, but it makes me think of this every time. There's so many ways I can relate to it. But the one where the girl stitched it and she's like, why are girls like just so mean to each other all the time? Or why is this person being so mean? And she's like, someone stitched it and was like, she has a mean mommy.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we've talked about that one.
Yeah.
Her mom was mean to her. Her mom didn't know how to engage with other women, and she doesn't know how to engage with other women now. Her mom is mean to her and to other women. And so I think it's a learned behavior.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying like everybody learned it from their mom, but like
the general theme there is that you are surrounded by women who tear other women down, and that becomes a part of our culture. It becomes a part of like, and I don't want to speak like different gender, all those things, but like I think that stereotypical like white hetero women, that is our culture, is to tear each other down.
Or has been.
It has been, not anymore. I think we've really gotten away from that. And if anything, I think it's a little cringy when people do that.
And that's the thing.
At least
like
in my
I've
life.
had conversations recently where it's like, it's hard when someone is coming to you to vent.
Right.
But it's like, it doesn't feel good because it's like, okay, you aren't asking for my help.
Right.
You
want validation.
You want validation. And you're talking about, that is so true. And you're talking about someone that I know and care about.
Yeah.
How am I supposed to engage? Because I don't have this problem with this person.
Right.
And to like engage with them differently feels like I might be offending you because you might feel like I'm disloyal.
Right.
But I don't have that issue with this person.
Right.
And I don't want to sit here and validate what you're saying because I don't agree. And so to give you my stamp of approval feels inauthentic.
No, it's actually a pretty and like, listen, this is coming from a serial venter, by the way. Like I vent constantly. I'm like totally okay owning that because I think I need to find a healthier way to get the emotion and turmoil that's always in my chest and belly out that isn't venting. But I do recognize that after I vent, I feel so guilty because I'm like, well, fuck, now, like I vented to this person about another person. And if if it's a mutual friend or mutual relationship we have, imagine how uncomfortable it is for the person I vented to about the person that they are also friends with. Like, how is that interaction going to be for them? And typically what tends to happen is like that person is so uncomfortable that more often than not, in my experience, they then tell that person that I have issues. And it's like the cycle perpetuates itself because then they're talking about me, and then it eventually always gets back to like, if it's me, like I'm the one that started the venting, eventually it always gets back to me. And then my feelings are hurt because like, why would you tell them that was disloyal? Why were you guys even like, I can't stand knowing that I was talked about. I can't stand it.
It feels icky.
I don't want anyone to put my name in their mouth unless it's talking about how awesome I am because I am a child. So it's like this nasty cycle. Like no good comes from venting.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. And I think the key though, like what we've talked about is the curiosity piece.
Yeah.
Like instead of approaching it with the anger leading like in the driver's seat, it's okay, put curiosity driving the car. And then I think your approach to like venting becomes a whole different thing because you're curious about the other person.
Right.
And then you're curious about a solution.
And why these emotions are being evoked.
Yeah. And, and then, exactly. You're curious about what inside of you is so triggered.
Right. But you need to have the stability to be able to be introspective and take the fact that it's not going to be a fun journey. You're going to like, when I have like my nastiest moment, like I was just talking with one of my good girlfriends about how, you know, there have been people in my life that I just have problems with them they're great people. they're amazing. I do love and adore them, but there's always something they do that bothers me. And I've gotten to this point now where I feel so much guilt because I would just sit and vent. And it's like, no, Kel, take a fucking seat. There's something that they bring out in you. For me, it usually comes from honestly a place of envy. There's something about them that I really like that I feel like is unattainable. And so I'm just, instead of being like, Kelly, what can you do to find a way to be that way? If you want to adopt that like characteristic or like learn to be more, whatever it is, that is so much harder than just talking shit.
Oh yeah. And I think like to go back to the person that I've struggled with, it's like there is something about them that I really admire that is like a place that I'm really shut down or I've been shamed to not express myself in that way. Right. So I don't want to share like what that is because I think it would make it really obvious and out them. And I don't want to do that. Yeah, exactly. So I think, but like I can recognize that like, okay, they can express themselves in this way and I want to do that really badly, but I've been kind of like shamed and like,
you feel like you can't do that.
Like, yeah, exactly. There's a lot of things like, growing up where it's like, oh, you know, like, don't do that. That's like that's not useful, like of your energy, but it feels really aligned for me. Yeah. And so I see that in this person and I'm like, how cool that they are just so like out and proud basically about this part of themselves. And I'm like keeping myself closeted about like this part of myself or like not wanting to fully engage with it because I feel like I hate this term, but I feel like it's cringe or embarrassing or like, you know, like what a waste.
Yeah, totally.
Like it's not important. Yeah. You know? And so I recognize that in them and I'm like, okay, that is like something to sit with. It's like, okay, if that they can be a expander for me in that way, where I'm like, okay, if they can also engage with this part of themselves, I can engage with that part of myself. Yeah. You know,
but I do think it's important to also recognize, you know, your boundaries with things. And it's so good to, I think, see people. It just helps conflict so much to see people as like expanders, teachers, whatever you want to call them. I think it's a muscle that like I have to work out every single day, like, especially for the people that challenge me the most, that bring up the most in me. But also self-preservation is a thing. And if there are people that are constantly, I don't have a better word for it. I'll find one. But if there are people that are constantly evoking negative emotions or things that make you feel bad, triggers, if you will, I don't think that is a lesson anymore. I think it's a lesson that it's time to put up a boundary. If it's constantly happening, if you've done the introspection, if you have, you know, investigated and contemplated, like at this point, to me, that just feels like a lot of mental energy to continue to have to feel that way. Like, okay, lessons learned. I need to do this more, or I'm feeling this way, but I'm still around this person and they are draining me or they are making me feel things that aren't good for my health.
I'm having to do mental gymnastics to just exist in their sphere.
Then like boundary time. It is Libra, balance. No, like it is.
I think that's so huge. And I think where people have, where there's sometimes is problems with saying like, oh, that's a boundary for me. It's no one can cross your boundaries. It's your responsibility to hold your boundary, right?
Which is so hard to do, but it's critical.
All of this, like it's kind of these stoicism principles, right? Where it's your responsibility to maintain. Like it's no one can come in like your like border around your or like wall or whatever is your job to maintain. It's not the enemy's job to make sure that they don't like tear your bricks down. That's their purpose. Right. That's their goal is to infiltrate. Right. Yeah. I'm speaking in like, I don't know, prehistoric war times.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm thinking the Great Wall of China right now. I don't know why.
Oh, I was thinking like the wall around Dubrovnik.
Oh, okay. That works too. Yeah.
But we're saying the same thing.
Yeah.
So it's like, it's not their job to be like, oh, they put a wall, we shouldn't cross it.
Right.
It's your job to be like, to reinforce that wall.
Right.
And so I think what you're saying is magic, because why would you continue to infuse yourself into situations where you don't feel good?
Right.
Where you're engaging with someone who doesn't like inspire these good feelings.
Right.
I think it's important to like engage with a little so you're not in an echo chamber, right? And so for some character development, it's important for
critical.
The plot. Yeah. But at the end of the day, like why wouldn't you put more of your time and energy into things that you want to come into the wall to like.
Right. Well, and I think it like not to use this word, and I know that we're going to do a whole other episode on this, but I do think that things have shifted a bit with like cancel culture becoming so prevalent, where I think that
Go off on this.
Okay, look, here's my thing. I love social media so much, and I love that we have gotten to a place like where I've seen so many, like, you know, as a serial people pleaser, God, I hate that term, but as a serial person who has a hard time maintaining boundaries.
Okay.
I struggle with that so hard.
I like that way better, because I think with what we identify with, we perpetuate.
Yeah.
And I don't think you are a people pleaser anymore. I think you have struggled with those
in the past,
like those kind of ways of engaging.
When I let the pendulum swing too far. And I think if there's a really good way that you don't ever want to be close to me, call me a people pleaser. I dare you. I dare you. But I can say it about myself that I've struggled with it in the past. But as a person who does struggle to maintain boundaries because I'm so afraid of losing people. I think it's been really dope for me. And I got too fueled by this attitude of like, if people aren't serving you, cut them out. Like, I remember hearing that a lot on social media and being like, yeah, fuck yeah. Like, if you're not going to like only bring positivity, like that is so toxic to me. If someone is not bringing positivity and benefit to your life 24/7, you cut them out. Abso-fucking-lutely not, because there are people that are coming into your life that are challenging you, and that's where real character development comes from.
Growth.
It's easy to just enjoy your life and relationships all the time, but like, my God, some of my most tumultuous moments in my relationships have been in the last few years, and I don't think it's a coincidence that those things have happened. And the feedback I get the most from people about myself is that I have never been better. Like, people have never seen me happier. People have never seen me in a better place. It's because of how many lessons I have learned. And I'm not trying to talk myself up, but I do think that people should be allowed, if you really have a deep relationship, to challenge you and you don't cut them out.
Because I think when you cut people off, you deny any possibility of curiosity, which is the thing that we keep coming back to.
You need to explore it. Like,
you have to engage with it.
Yeah. And not just go, that person's making me uncomfortable. That person's making me feel insecure. That person is whatever. Done. Well, that's crazy.
People do that with themselves as soon as a tough emotion comes up, whether or not it's like provoked by like someone else. It's like, oh, well, I don't want to feel that, so I'm just going to watch TV, or I'm going to go on TikTok, or I'm going to eat this thing, or I'm going to buy this thing. It's like, you don't want to engage with the uncomfortable emotion.
Yep.
So you're like, well, I'll just do this instead. I'll just shut it down.
Where's my vice?
Engage with something that is going to give me an emotion that I do want to feel.
Which
are the vices.
To be perfectly clear, I do that all the time.
Same.
Like, there's no pedestal here. I drown myself in my vices all the time.
Yeah.
But I think it's like, I've gotten to a point where I'm so fed up with this, like, oh, if people aren't serving you, then like, let them go. You're going to end up alone.
Yeah.
We're all humans. And I know that
you're going to end up like in the same stagnant place.
And that's the thing, is like, for me,
you're going to stay there.
You're going to stay there. And I think it's so important for me. I've learned like the deepest relationships I have right now are all people that are constantly looking to grow and better themselves. And I think that the people that are maybe people that you set boundaries, and eventually, like, you don't need to cut anyone off. I'm sorry, unless they are doing harm. That's a whole different story, by the way. Unless they are doing actual harm to you, your emotions, your physical body, your mental health, what the hell ever. I think that to cut people off is just, it doesn't actually do anyone good. Like, you could just put up a boundary and eventually it'll probably just fizzle out.
I think it's the way you're engaging with them is what's the problem.
Yeah.
So I don't think it's maybe that you need to cut them off. I think there are circumstances where that's appropriate and necessary.
Yes,
right?
don't get me wrong. Of course there are.
I'm not going to go into what those are. You can figure it out for your fucking self.
Read between the lines,
I hope you're adults that are listening to this.
Yeah.
But the point is, like,
you'll get there.
You'll get there.
The point is,
hold on. Oh, the engagement. The way you're engaging with them.
Yeah.
That is not serving you anymore. So it's time to switch things up.
Yeah.
And if that means less engagement, if that means
I love this. Yes.
Not like allowing that reactive emotional response to come out when you're, or to run the show, not to come out, but like to run the show.
Right.
And like, it's about changing your interactions.
And that
with
can
them.
Also look like time.
Time apart. Exactly.
Yeah, you can like put up the boundary of not giving someone your time or saying yes every time they ask you to hang out, and not cut them off.
Correct.
I think cutting people off is, again, there's exceptions, but I think that cutting people off is pretty dangerous. And like we've said, again, it's limiting. I think that letting those people teach you lessons, it forces you to self-reflect. It forces you to dive into the deepest, darkest parts of like your shadow. They are like those people are casting shadows. Those people are making your shadows more prevalent and visible, and like lean into that.
They're inspiring like the taboo parts of yourself, right? Like the things that like haven't come out yet. This is very like Plutonian, very like Scorpio. Like it's getting to like the depths of things that we just shove down that we don't want anyone to see.
Right.
But I think what you're saying is so profound, because I think with time, you give yourself space from the person, from the situation, so that you can actually process what is causing you pain.
I need it. I need that time to process.
When that person is constantly like, when you're allowing them into like across your borderline,
right?
Basically,
right?
Like into the other side of the wall, you don't have enough space from the trigger, to understand what the trigger is.
Yeah, if they're always around, you don't have any time to like be like, what the fuck is going on?
Like this, it's something's being provoked in you, and you don't even have the space to figure it out. So I think the time piece that you're speaking about,
critical,
gives you that space.
And I think that there's at least for me, a naivete to like, I am feeling frustrated with someone, I'm going to keep spending time with them because we just need more time together
to sort through it, to work through it.
And it's like, absolute for me, I need space.
I need to retreat.
I need to retreat and not be reactive and ground myself.
Fourth house things.
Yeah. I know, if anything, like being with someone when I'm feeling agitated, and I'm easily agitated, truly. It's a recipe for disaster.
Yeah. And I think that speaks so much because we both have similar placements in our chart where we have the moon in the fourth house, right?
Yeah.
And I think that so much of that, the fourth house, I've learned is kind of like this, like it's the underworld, right? And it's like this place where you can go that's like not in the top of the chart. It's at the bottom. It's separate from everything, right?
Yeah.
And you go there and it's like this place where you can process, because your moon is like your emotional self, the way you process your emotions and the way you experience your emotions.
It's yourself at its most raw.
Yes. Yeah. And so it is necessary to be able to unpack all of that, sort through all of that. You have to go to the underworld, and then you can come back up once you've like worked through it. And
it's so complicated. Like I hear, like, you know, if you're out there, or like if anyone's listening and it's like, okay, well, like going to that place, like for me for so long was so scary, and I denied it so hard because I was so afraid that if I took space, if I gave people anxious attachment style things, if I gave people space instead of seeing it as like I'm giving myself space to not be a reactive dick, where I'm giving myself the opportunity to lie to people and do all of these toxic things, trying to fix things, that in that time that I was using to heal myself and get some perspective, they would leave. Does that make sense? Like if I give them space, they're going
I see what you're saying.
to leave.
Yeah.
And so I think that that's, again, where you have to, it's a self-preservation thing to take space. I've learned so much about time and space are tools and our friend. They're not something to fear.
I love
You know
that.
what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, I really think that I would have had so much more success with friendships, especially girl friendships, if I would have allowed myself time to be alone. I'm a much more likable person when I'm not being reactive.
And you know what's kind of funny is like the concept of like, don't give them everything, because it like kind of creates like, I don't know, like it creates a, like in marketing or in whatever, like, like give people teases, give doses, don't just give everything and then have like, don't like,
that's something I have to work on every day of my life.
You know, so when it comes to relationships, I think that there is like, what's that? Like separation makes the heart grow fonder, whatever that saying isn't, like in romantic relationships. Like,
absence makes the heart grow fonder.
That's the one. So I think that there's something to be said for that. I think like your relationships become so much sweeter when there is that space and time away.
Couldn't agree more. I think that I start to get, I have friends that like we have reflected on that so much, where we were spending, there was just an expectation of, we spent every weekend together. We spent every holiday together. Any days off of work, we were together, because that was again that anxious attachment style, and all
on both ends.
Mm-hmm. And at the end of the day, like, we are in a very different place now where we can all of us look back and be like, that was so toxic and unrealistic. And if you really love someone, you have to be able to have time and space away from them.
Yeah.
And if you can't handle it, in my opinion, that is kind of like,
that's a flag of something that needs healing.
Yeah. And I think that sometimes, like, I do understand, like, at least for me, this is just me. I felt like because of like maybe the movies I grew up watching or whatever, like, love is needing, again, this is very personal to me, but love is needing and wanting to be with someone 24/7. And like, honestly, I can say that the people that I love the most, I have to have space.
Mm-hmm.
I love you more than anyone on the planet. And I don't think I could see you every day.
No.
I would never live with you.
No.
Don't ever ask me to do it, because I think it would just cause my relationship to implode. And that's just not you. That's anyone who I am, my personality. I cannot be around someone every single day, because I have to have time to sit with everything that's going on all up in here. There's a lot of shit that goes on all up in this chest. And I think it's pretty unflattering when I don't have time to sort through that stuff.
Yeah.
I think it makes me a very, at times, hard person to be around, because I'm like trying to give so much of myself to a person when inside I'm like, you have so many things to work through.
Yeah.
Take some time.
Well, and I think kind of to wrap it up, it's like, it's interesting to think about time away from other people to go inward, right? Mm-hmm. When you're with other people, you're away from yourself.
Absolutely. So said it perfectly.
So you need that back and forth of like to manage your external relationships and then your relationship with yourself.
Yeah.
Because when you're like out with other people, you're not fostering the internal stuff at all. So it's like you have to be able to like come back to yourself, but you can't stay there with just yourself for too long, because that's just as detrimental as not going back out and like engaging with everyone else.
Well, yeah. And I think the theme of this episode, it's interesting how it like shifted, by the way.
This went a completely different way than we intended.
We're going to save the next one for like what we were supposed to talk about was not this at all.
I loved this.
This was an hour-long tangent. But I think that, I think that this episode, like we should, it's about conflict. And I think that conflict comes from, at least, again, for me, but I feel safe sharing that for me, conflict comes from when I am not spending enough time with myself. I have not given the time or space with myself to maintain my relationship with myself, my mental health, and therefore I'm grasping at straws, just trying to balance everyone else.
Well, because you haven't tended to the internal conflict. Yeah. And so then you have these different parts of yourself that are like, no, I want this. And then this other part, no, this is really important.
I'm feeling this way.
Yeah. And so then because you haven't dealt with the internal conflict, you can't deal with the external conflict.
Absolutely.
So I could not love how you summed that up more. That was beautiful.
And now you're going to go to therapy about it and talk about how good this was.
I really am.
I know you are.
I also have to say, I don't think we've ever had more ADHD moments than we did today.
But I feel like those moments are the ones where like we need to have that conversation.
Yeah. Like, hello, my name is Chloe and I'm neurodivergent.
Yeah. Hi, my name's Kelly and I have anxious attachment style. So don't come at me unless you want me to hold on to you for dear life.
On that note,
I think we need to wrap this up because this apartment's 100 fucking degrees right now.
The amount of sweat I have behind my knees.
This whole, my ass is a swamp. I have swamp ass right now.
I don't have swamp ass, but I have swamp back of knee.
Oh, we'll call that like a swamp, knee reservoir. I don't know, like a little collection, a pool of water.
You're sick. This has to end.
Okay, goodbye. Bye. That is it.
Okay, one last thing before you go. There is no us without you. Go like and subscribe our show on your favorite streaming service and go follow us on all socials at Let's Get Taboo. Chat with you next time.